So what happens when the dismissive avoidant finally goes to therapy? So many times I've heard from people, my avoidant partner or my avoidant ex, they did therapy, they went, and they still pulled away. They still discarded me. They still refused to take accountability. They still shut down. I've also heard horror stories and witnessed horror stories in action with couples coaching and therapy when it comes to dismissive avoidance. So let me break this down. Going to therapy is great, but that doesn't mean that the dismissive avoidant is going to change and going to heal at all. Often, when a dismissive avoidant goes to therapy, it is not necessarily indicative that they are ready to change. Let me explain why. They might still be fully avoidant. They might be people-pleasing their partner to get them to shut up. Look, I'm going to therapy. Look, I'm doing this work. Look, I'm going to couples therapy. I'm doing what you want. Can you stop nagging me now? If that is their mindset, they're not really opening to change. They're not self-reflecting. They are still internally avoiding their wounds, their shame, avoiding accountability that is so painful for them that pokes at their core wound of shame. Shame is at the heart of dismissive avoidant attachment, and it comes from consistent, profound childhood emotional neglect. They personalize that neglect in childhood, growing up to feel defective and unlovable. It's a shame wound, and shame is a toxic emotion, and it serves no purpose, no healthy purpose anyway. So their entire attachment style is oriented around avoiding that shame, avoiding feeling it, avoiding confronting it, and avoiding exposing it. So when they're in therapy, well, they're getting feedback that's poking at that shame, and they can be very resistant and shut down, and it can completely backfire, especially couples therapy. Now, when they go to individual therapy, there's a few different ways that can go. One is the best case scenario where they completely open up, they reveal their inner wounds, and they really listen to what the therapist has to say. They take that advice and apply it to their lives, and they really do the inner work. And that's the best case scenario, and it's definitely possible, but they have to want it. Now, the most likely scenario is that they go to therapy to get validated by the therapist. For example, if their avoidant fears are getting triggered and they're in the fault-finding phase, trying to find justifications to leave their partner, they might go into therapy and tell the therapist about how awful and controlling their partner is and how they're just so incompatible. And then the therapist will go, well, if you're that incompatible, maybe you should just leave. Yeah, I should just leave. They just got validated. They just got their avoidance validated by the therapist. That's often why they go into therapy, to get the validation, because this is a person that relies heavily on external validation. So they're just using the therapist to continue their own avoiding of things they don't want to face. Another way it commonly goes is that they go into therapy and they talk about the surface level things, the things that really don't even remotely come close to their core attachment wounds. Oh, so-and-so at work is such a jerk, and he gets under my skin and I get so aggravated. Very surface level stuff, but not revealing their core shame, not talking about their childhood, not talking about the fears that they have with intimacy, not talking about that at all. So going into therapy, it doesn't mean that this person is going to change. They have to want the change, want it badly enough to really be vulnerable, not only with the therapist, but with their partner, to open up, to actually communicate their inner feelings and inner fears, and want it badly enough to do a consistent change in behavior in their own lives when it's hard, when it's difficult, when it's triggering. If they lean into that discomfort rather than out, communicating when they'd otherwise withdraw, staying when they'd otherwise go, their behavior will show whether they're truly committed to actual change and healing or not. But going to therapy, it is not necessarily indicative that they're going to change. And quite often, it really doesn't result in change at all. It is a must for them if they want to change, but it doesn't mean they're going to actually use the therapy the way that it's meant to be used. In couples therapy, it can be great if they are fully open and vulnerable and willing to listen to feedback. But if they are still entrenched in their own avoidance and they got dragged to couples coaching or therapy, kicking and screaming, it's just going to backfire, because any feedback, any kind of accountability is just going to trigger them. They'll shut down it, maybe even stop going altogether. Now, any therapist or coach that understands dismissive avoidance will understand how to approach them, how to get through to them without poking at that shame. But most coaches and therapists don't know how to speak to dismissive avoidance without triggering them, without getting them to shut down, and it usually backfires and blows up. Any therapist or coach that understands them will try to get them to come to their own conclusions and to see things in a different light without providing direct critical feedback that really pokes at that shame wound. Ooh, I'm defective. It's very tricky and very difficult to do. And unfortunately, a lot of trained professionals that are very good at what they do struggle to really communicate effectively in a therapy or coaching session with a dismissive avoidant. But that said, even the best therapist or best coach in the world will not get through to them if they don't want to be gotten through to. You can't change them. You can love them as hard as you want, but your love won't change them. And them changing has no reflection on you or your worth. The better you are, the more loving you are as a partner, the more they get triggered. So it never had anything to do with your worth. It's hard not to personalize it, but it is important to recognize it's their core wounds and has nothing to do with you or your worth or value as a partner. Remind yourself